And for the record, let it show that Subcommittee Chair Schmidt and Representative Ticehurst are here, along with two commissioners and Assistant Superintendent Henry. Superintendent Johnson is away on important business on Concord, where he could not attend this meeting, and but I feel we will be served in good stead by Assistant Superintendent Henry. So let me start off by discussing briefly, we had some outstanding questions pertaining to the county jail, which the superintendent has submitted. And these questions really, which he has answered to my satisfaction, include prisoner costs per day and per annum, jail termination, jail personnel termination stats, taking in of outside prisoners, and lastly, a county jail comparison. So if I can just briefly go over this information, which seems okay. In response to the one question, Carroll County had 21,000, and let me interrupt myself. I have packets here if you guys don't.
Right.
Anybody need it? Okay.
Do you, just for the, what you're talking about?
Yeah, these are just copies of his emails.
Oh, you got one, that's fine.
Okay. Thank you, Steve.
Last year, Carroll County had a total of 21, let's say, rounded up, almost 22,000 bed days, average daily population of 62, cost per day was approximately $118, costing just over $43,000 per offender. So that will give you a perspective on what Carroll County has. Let me compare that now to as what Chairman Umberger had asked for in a breakdown, and I'm only going to include the smaller counties here, but to give you a basis of comparison.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman.
Sure.
Didn't you say that Carroll County had a cost per day of 43,000?
That was per annum cost, annual cost,
Annual.
if you annualized it.
Oh, okay, and I'm looking at per day, thank you.
Right.
Did you do the new one for the cost per day for Carroll County, not 118, 105? I think it's on the next sheet.
This is on this one.
Yeah. That's the initial until we broke it down again.
All right, so this one supersedes this one?
Yes, yes.
Okay. There's been a correction to the $118 cost. He's updated that, and we're down to $105. By basis of comparison, we're looking at Belknap, and this is some of the issues that came up the last time as an ADP, and that's what, average daily prisoner count? Is that what that is? Average daily
population.
Average daily population of 87 at a cost per day of $77. Carroll's average population is 73 on the update here, with a cost per day of $105. That's based on an average population of 62. COAS has a ADP of 61, an average cost per day of $110. Cheshire is a bigger county. He's got 230, an average cost per day of $114. And lastly, I think for basis of comparison, I think I'll stop at Grafton with an ADP of 150, cost per day of $88. And I think what you find here is if you go through the total state, there certainly is a correlation between the average daily prisoner count and your cost per day. I mean, that's not exactly rocket science. And Stratford County, with the highest prisoner count of 495, it's got a cost per day of $74.25. But again, their average daily population is pushing up on 500.
And a lot of those are feds that pay for that, so that drives it down.
Yeah.
And on Grafton's, I brought this for you, they drive theirs down with.
Okay. So basically, the data satisfies me that certainly, I think, for a small county, Carroll County's cost per prisoner is certainly in a reasonable range. I don't see any issues with it. One of the other issues we wanted to talk about was basically that the county jail at the moment is, we felt, was underutilized. And in response to that, the department had met with a federal marshal to discuss the bringing in of federal prisoners. It appears that there's not too many issues involved with that. And reading from Mr. Johnson's memo, it seems that we're going to take in a couple and go from there. So maybe that would need to more. And I congratulate you fellas on going the extra mile here. But in my opinion, even one prisoner per day will reduce costs to Carroll County. Our costs are fixed. Any additional revenue, I think, is a boon. And I wish you great success. Yes, sir.
I would echo what you said, but I just wonder, for the purposes of budgeting, we really don't have any good projection of what we would get from the federal program, so we really can't adjust the budget.
Well,
Is that correct?
what I'm hearing is you could probably expect in the range of $90 per day federal reimbursement.
But we don't have any idea how many prisoners we're going to have, or
Or how many days?
how many days.
No, we don't.
So probably would be wisest just to leave the budget as it is, and then,
Oh, I'm not going to touch the budget.
Okay.
I'm just responding to, an area we touched upon where we basically said, it would be good business practice if we could increase our prisoner population here with a corresponding increase in revenue and knock down the cost. So in response to that, they went out, and it appears that after meeting with the marshal, there's not that many impediments to bring in federal prison. So the federal marshal, correct me if I'm wrong here, stated that they would start with a couple and go from there. So
It's a lengthy application, we've already started. Once that's finished, they would come in and just assess us, but they've already said we meet all the criteria, we're good to go. Then what they do is, their population is down a little bit, but they would also reach out to Maine, because it's under a federal jurisdiction, and see if we can bring some of them over. I think they have a little more need for bed space.
yeah.
Start with a couple, make sure it goes well, and then increase from there, and work out a number that will work comfortably for what we have, and what will work. Beginning, setting rates, that is what you have to do. You negotiate rates of what they're going to pay you. Belknap County just redid theirs. Most of the counties have a contract with them, so you negotiate about where you need to be to cover your costs, transportation, everything else. So that's the process we're in.
Okay. Do we have any idea when you might get your first prisoner in here?
Hopefully sometime this year. The process itself takes a little bit. Superintendent's working with the downstairs with the finance office, because you got to put together a bunch of finances to figure out your rates. So if we can get that wrapped up in the next few weeks, get that to them, the quick assessment, I hope within the next maybe 3 months, we can probably start getting our first one. If it goes well, we can probably get some more.
Okay. My last request would be that, would you ask Commissioner Johnson to keep me updated on the progress of that? The last open issue we had talked about was, in the opinion of our subcommittee, was the alarming rate of personnel turnover in the jail, which was approaching 50% actually last
It's
year.
over 50%.
Over 50%. So Commissioner Johnson has responded to our question here, and of the 17, 4 were terminated, 13 resigned. Of those 13, 2 returned to school, 6 went to new jobs, and 5 left for personal reasons. And he goes on to say, on average, from 2011 until now, 29 people have left, on average 9 per year, or 28% of the staff. We will be looking to develop a comprehensive package, and we'll present it to you for your input. And again, I commend the Commissioner for recognizing that we've certainly got an issue here which directly leads to increased costs, certainly in terms of training, maybe even liability issues. I hope some would agree. So I think we need to get that down to a reasonable rate, and again, I would be interested in being updated on where you go on that, and that would be interesting. Lastly, let me address one other issue on that, because one key issue that keeps coming up on that is the rather poor reimbursement rates we have for our jail personnel. And I will say this in front of the commissioners and to you to bring back to Commissioner Johnson. That's a business case that you ought to prepare, and the reasons why you feel that should be adjusted, and that case should be presented to the commissioners. It's not in the purview of the delegation to say, we need to get your prisoners up to your prisoners.
They'd like to get paid.
Yeah, your jail personnel to $15 or $16 an hour. That has to be internal, and then work through the process. So I just wanted to be clear on that.
We did, as you remember, 2 years ago, they got $1 an hour raise to help bring them up to probably the lower end of the scale of what other facilities are paying.
Yeah.
But it did bring them up.
Somewhere in this packet of information, I had that breakdown.
I remember getting that on email, and my memory could
I have it in my head.
certainly be.
I had it in my head. I must have left it home, but I'll addend that to the minutes also. Needless to say, Carroll County's at the bottom of the heap. Is my recollection of that.
Yep.
And so it's certainly a contributing factor to that type of turnover rate. So, I'm not suggesting that you necessarily remain at the bottom, nor am I suggesting that you go to the top, but enough said on that issue. Any questions so far on what we've discussed? Because I think I've addressed all the outstanding questions we had for the Commissioner before I get into the budget itself.
Jason, go ahead.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Babson?
Thank you, Representative Schmidt. One of the things that we've done, and it was been a big concern of Commissioner Sorensen and myself, is the turnover rate. And we started working on that before Mr. Henry got here. One of the things, believe it or not, HR was never involved in the hiring process. That's been underway now for about 6 months. It's eliminating some people that probably would come here for a week or two or a month and then leave. So we are making progress. We got a ways to go. One of our goals is to drop that down to significantly.
Okay.
I guess my question too was, is there a follow-up on those people that leave? Is it wages?
A lot of his wages, and I have a whole package I could send to you guys that I'll work with
Yeah.
the commissioners and give you everything, the breakdown of.
We had 13 people that
Respect.
resigned or left,
I didn't
and
Nine
some went to
bucks.
school, and,
About 9 per year, 28% of staff,
yeah.
because we're
I did.
not retaining. There's a lot of other counties that we have research for, all of them have usually a step increase, so they have a way to go. If you get them past the 1 year mark, you stay at 5, you pass the 5 year mark, you stay at 10. Once they're at 10, they usually continue to stay. That's why a lot of counties, you see a step increase program to get you to there. There's no step increase programs, not a lot of incentive there when you can walk down the street making a similar amount of money, not having to deal with the same thing you're dealing here. So it's not at the point where I can just go because I'm gonna make a similar amount and deal with a lot less.
Mhm.
And I have a lot of stats and a lot of things put together to present to you guys.
I would hope that when you and the superintendent meet with the affiliates, that's one of the issues that you'd bring up, and have some comparisons already made up on an annual basis, that this is what we're paying for our correctional officers, this is what the other county is paying, and.
We have all the data already.
Okay.
Yep.
Representative Schmidt, may I ask a Chairman a question? Just a quick question, Jason. On the sheet for what has happened to people, of that 2 returned to school, we can understand that. 6 went to new jobs, 5 personal reasons. Do you know if any of those 5 personal reasons were because of more money? Or is that something different?
Don't know. I don't know if that's just left for personal reasons. The exit interview's done through HR.
Okay. Thank you.
So record indicate that Representative White has joined us. Thank you.
Rough driving?
I got behind, 20 cars behind a snowplow going 20 miles an hour, all the way from 25 to 28. There were about 150 cars behind me. So yeah, it was a lot frustrating. Sorry about that.
Great.
You're 5 minutes early.
Just to bring you up to date, what we were discussing here are some of the outstanding questions that have been responded to by Commissioner Johnson, and I'll give you a package of his. And these pertain really to cost per day, turnover, and all that stuff. So, and we talked about that. So I think we're doing pretty good on that.
Very good.
And it looks like we're going to bring in some federal prisoners, and which should give us some increased revenue, which is a good thing.
Good.
So moving right along, any other questions on? Let's go to the budget, and let us make sure everyone is reading off the same sheet of paper. I'm going off a green sheet here, which is dated 2/1/2014, which I believe has all the end of the year goodies in it.
We're saving paper, so some of the 201s are on
It's
blue.
colored
or-
paper.
I was going to say, I like your royal blue.
We
but I guess
don't want to make you jealous.
That's
Mr.
why,
Chairman.
that's why you're a commissioner there, you know? And,
I have all my different colored ones with me today. I just have the, I don't know what I did.
okay. Assistant Superintendent Henry, let me start with the jail and House of Corrections budget, and let's start with the overtime line, which is line 005. So as I'm reading down, I'm just see some inconsistencies here. We ended the year 2013 and we spent almost $452,000 in overtime. I'm sorry,
Yeah.
wrong line. You panicked there for a second.
You bet.
I didn't read right.
41,000.
It's almost $42,000.
Yeah.
And we're coming in, I guess the commissioners had recommended 20, and the subcommittee here has got 30. I don't know if we agreed to that or not. But that represents an increasing in staffing, I presume. So you're anticipating not having the overtime because you've staffed up?
Staffing and the recent purchase of an online training program that's going to cover the cost of, instead of us having to do overtime on shift for these classes,
Yeah.
so then coming in days off, we're going to significantly reduce our overtime with those costs as well too. Hopefully this will be even less what we're spending overtime.
Okay. Then let's go down to the salary line, which is line 10. And we finished 2013 at $864,000 in salary. And we're looking at a proposal here of $818,000, which is a significant reduction, but that seems to be contradicted by an increase in staff. I would not expect to see a reduction that large, and I don't quite understand it.
The administrative salaries went up a little bit. Some people that are on non-union moved up to the administrative salaries, up to that line, which took care of bringing the cost down on this line, basically.
Yep.
And we lost some people that were making a higher rate too, so.
So you're telling we had a line shift. We went from,
Yes.
Yep.
okay.
Almost $80,000 shift
Up. Okay.
for administrative salaries, yeah.
Okay, let us now go to line 18, which is education and conferences. You finished the year at $7,200 or $7,300. I'm just rounding up here, folks, because I'm not into the cents. It annoys me. And we're proposing $10,000 for next year, which is a fairly significant increase from what you actually spent. 25% increase. And frankly, I think I would be inclined to reduce that line by about $1,500. Yeah.
I think what happened was our superintendent injured himself and he didn't go to a conference. And normally it's two people that goes to that, and that's why the expenses in 2013 were lower.
Okay, so this is including his conference that he always goes to.
Yeah.
Unless he injures himself again.
Yeah, right.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Wouldn't this also be the line item where, for the program that we just authorized yesterday, the Reliance, would that come under education and conferences?
We're taking out of the training budget.
And if so, that would raise that somewhat, but it would also theoretically reduce our overtime because they'd be able to do it here and not have to go to Concord.
These are conferences like AJA, ACA.
I understand that, but
Yeah.
the education, doesn't that come under the education item, or are we gonna have to tuck it
No, I
somewhere
think it comes out
else?
of
Other fees and services?
yeah, it's gonna come out of fees and services
Of
or
the
on the
other
training,
fees,
on the
okay.
training department, and savings of overtime. It's
Okay.
more than covered,
Thank you.
both areas.
All right, fellow committee members, are we okay with the education and conference line?
Mhm.
Okay. This has nothing to do with this here. I'm just curious if you fellows have had any discussion yet on the medical services and supplies, which is a very big line. And I assume that is your inmate health care costs or your own internal costs. What is that line?
Medical services, supplies, yeah, hospital visits, the medication,
Basically for inmates.
yeah, offenders, yeah,
We just had a big one
yes.
that went down to.
We just had two big ones, one at the hospital and one for dental,
Yeah,
to the tune of almost just shy of 10 grand.
So given what's happened recently, are you still comfortable with the figures?
Yeah, with hiring of our nursing supervisor, she's been working very closely with the doctors and trying to reduce all costs we can to not send them out. It was, the department wasn't structured the way it should be. It's structured now, and she's really working on reducing costs between medications, when they go out, and those kinds of things. So we're really reducing costs. Yes, it should be. We're right on par where we need to be.
I'm just curious, I don't think it's gonna affect the budget this year, but it may affect it next year. Have you folks had any discussions with your peers as to the potential impact of the Affordable Care Act on this line?
That's something that I'm not sure where it's going with that, so.
we're not either. We're concerned about it.
Guess we'll leave that for a future day, no sense.
We're not
No.
a small employer, so we don't know what's gonna happen. Well, over the 250 limit easy.
I'm sure it will affect us. Not only the jail, everybody.
Okay, moving right along. Let me talk about inmate programs next, because this is a very significant increase. You spent a little over $12,000 in 13, and now you're projecting 17.5. It's a very significant increase. I'm not opposed to inmate programs. I think they're a really good thing. It's a very significant increase, however. I think I'm tempted here to ask you to take about a $1,500 cut on that line and go down to 16.
Well, I'd like to hear exactly why it's funded at that. Do you,
Okay.
do you have specifics as to what the money's going to?
I have it somewhere. MMA programs, I mean, it goes for the T for C class has been ramped up with a lot more offenders in it, thinking for a change class.
Okay.
The cost of that, because we're putting more people inside that class, there's a huge cost to that with the materials and those kinds of things. Commissioner can attest to, we've had very good success with people not returning after they've taken the class. Those kinds of things, the extra help we have in class that comes in. This also goes to, I believe, in our GED as well, which we didn't have GED. We're paying a part-time person now to come do GED classes as well. So that's also in part of this of going up from where it was before too. So we've increased those kinds of things.
See, that's one area I wouldn't want to cut is programming, because we really need to address the recidivism rate. And I think the more that we can do in that area, the better. So I don't think it's that much, I'd hate to see us having to cut, people out of a program or a program because we wanted to decrease by 1,500. So that's something I would support in the budget.
Let me ask you another question. Your average prisoner stay is what? Do they
60.
reside in your wonderful hotel?
Sentence, they can be sentenced to under a year. Pre-trial, they can be there until they go to court. So each offender, it all depends. I mean, if you want to calculate averages, they're from 45 days to 90 days, just depending on what our population's at. Right now, we have more sentenced than we do pre-trial, so those ones that are sentenced are usually closer to a year.
Okay. Let the record show that Representative McConkey has made an appearance with us.
Thank you. We're rescuing snowmobiles from roofs that have caved in. May I ask where you are, what line you're on?
We were on
Somewhere
Inmate
around
programs.
020.
inmate programs, which is line 29.
Thank you.
I was gonna say,
Yes,
Mr.
sir.
Chairman, that another problem at the jail is, used to be that you were only there for 365 days or less. The courts have been giving consecutive sentences, so we've had some that are in there year and a half. Even one, I guess, was 2 years, right, Jay?
Yeah, if you can be sentenced on one, and then the next one. So they get 1 year bids at a time,
So that gets kicked down to us rather than the state prison.
because it's not sentenced over to a year, it's on each individual charge, yes.
I had made a comment, Representative McConkey, that on line 29, where the actual dollars spent in the prior year were, again, I'm rounding up or down here, 12,000, and they're looking for an increase of 17,500. And I had proposed reducing that by $1,500 because it was I felt a rather high percentage increase. Representative White disagrees, and Representative Ticehurst has not weighed in yet, but I suspect she's going to disagree too.
Well, I think that the programming is really important. If anything, we should actually be putting more effort into it, if not more money into it. But if we were to reduce that amount, I would want to have a specific program or amount of services or something to reduce it, to justify the reduction, not just a dollar amount that we just don't kind of feel like spending money on it. Does that clear?
But let me let that as a challenge to you, because this is going to come up at our full delegation meeting. We may be in conflict on this, but ask Superintendent Johnson the impact of a $1,500 reduction, if he can quantify that. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm in favor of taking $1,500. I don't have a problem with that. But I agree with what Representative has said about program and program cost, and if we could break out where those are. I know that in the past, what is the high school equivalency program, the
GED.
GED. I know in the past we've had it, then it went away, and then it came back.
And that's part of the money's in there, is the GED's back, and paying someone there to take care of the GED program.
So if we could see where those are, and I think 1,500 may not be a deep enough cut. So let's take a look at that and see where it is.
So may I ask, is there some particular philosophical problem with programming? Because we don't seem to be asking for percentage reductions in other areas.
I would think, number one, I think you're going to see that's going to start happening. And I have been here long enough to hear that program all by itself. At advantages, how we've had it, how we never got anybody through the program. People aren't here long enough. When they come back again, we repurchase educational materials again for the same people walking back in here again. So I think if we look at some of those programs, and maybe there's some programs that would be better worth their time than some of the others. So I'm not opposed to taking a peek at it and seeing where we go.
Yeah, we'll break it down.
Okay, thank you. What I'm doing, Mark, is I've highlighted some areas which I think need attention here, so I'm not going through this line by line.
Okay.
So if there's something I skipped that's sticking in your throat, just raise
That's
your
fine.
hand.
Thank
and,
you.
We'll go there. Let's see, my next one, I guess, is line 40, supplies from the nursing home. And we finished the year at 3240, and we're going now at 5,000. And I wonder if you, I mean, that's another significant increase on a percentage basis. Could you talk about that?
And I would
Although it is down considerably from the prior year.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's our paper products, everything that we use inside the jail, and that's their cost of what they have to send over to us. And I know that they've working on reducing their costs by jumping in on some of those state programs. So in turn, our costs hopefully will go down on that as well too. So the county as a whole is working on reducing that entire cost of where we get our supplies from them. So to translate out.
Yeah. So this is really not a discretionary cost on your part then, whatever they, okay.
Trash bags, all the kind of stuff we use on a daily basis.
Okay.
Purchase through them.
My next line, and I know we're gonna have, well, let me get down to line 53, uniform expense. Finished the year at 5,700, you're in for 9,300. I know we have some new people going in. That's a very significant increase. I think I would propose knocking about 1,300 off of that at a minimum. Going down to 8,000.
Can I ask a question on that one?
Sure.
Is that just a projection? Is that why it went up so much, or is it actual cost that you know you're gonna need?
I mean, it isn't, it's a projection. We've lost over half the staff. We have 8 or 9 new people on staff that be outfitted. We have old stuff that needs to be transitioned out, including handcuffs at a big expense. We're trying to standardize our stuff for liability purposes, those kinds of things. So yeah, it's a projected cost of where we're at to outfit and take care of those needs on the uniforms. It takes care of everything on your duty belt as well too.
Okay.
So not just shirts and pants, it's all those materials.
If we cut it, do you foresee a problem, or could you live with the cut?
Talk training department, I mean, you cut. I don't know if I can remind now, but this budget that we have is $97,000 less than last year's budget. So,
I understand that. And thank you.
Fellow reps?
I have questions further down. I don't have an issue with the cut. If it turns out to be that we need more another time, we can address that another time.
Okay.
So, I don't want to run away from this quite that quickly. So are we saying that we either want to provide clothing to fewer people, or are we wanting to supply fewer items of clothing and accessories, or are we saying that we want to get by with older stuff and not standardize and upgrade?
Let me put it to you this way. If you look at the year end of 2012 for consistency, they spent on uniforms $5,200. Last year they spent $5,700, and I'm looking at a very significant percentage increase. Now, being a little cynical on my part, which I will fully admit to, now you've yet to see a budget that hasn't got a little bit of extra padding in it. I would suggest that that type of percentage increase is a little high, and I suspect the jail can get along very nicely on $8,000, but that's my perspective on it.
I'm just wondering that since they had such a high turnover, if it's a real number, that's what I'm.
the uniforms I'm told we have was a different staff at the time. None of those are going to fit. They were a little larger on the other side. You're not going to be able to tailor down, just put it that way. So it makes it difficult having to buy new stuff. The stuff's cheap.
I fully understand that. When I played Little League Baseball, I had extra large when I was a little guy, so if it's not a safety issue, I would agree with the representative that large an increase perhaps warrants taking a look at a reduction.
And I can get you a breakdown with what they're looking to purchase if that's helpful.
Thank you.
I just have one further question on this one.
Sure.
If, say we do the cut, and then you have more turnover, and you need more uniforms even than we thought, how do they get the money for that? Where does that come from?
if I might try and answer. When there is turnover, and there's two numbers here that I don't know, maybe you've already addressed it before. I believe there's a large number of people, a fair number of people that come to work in corrections, that after their break-in period and they're here, it just does not turn out to be the lifestyle that they would like to be in. And then there are the people that trade up and go somewhere else for another dollar. But when they've finished work, those duty belts and everything else we're talking about are still retained here. So whether there's a high turnover or people go on to pasture somewhere else, it would seem to me that we have that equipment available. And we're talking a large increase for that, so.
We do. The jail is trying to move forward and to standardize stuff and bring stuff in, like other facilities that haphazard leave. One has this, one has that, one has this. So it's an increase over time of trying to get this done. So, but when I get back, I can most certainly get a breakdown of what everything is.
Okay, and let me remind my subcommittee members, if, we propose these cuts, they're not final by any means. They require the full delegation to say a yay or nay on them. So basically what we're doing is we're doing a little trimming around the edges, so to speak, and, we'll get the breakdown, but whenever I see a tremendously large % increase in a budget line, it makes me look at it. And
Right, and
So
that's
they
why
were-
you need to actually know the actual
Right.
figures and what it is they're spending the money on.
Okay. Let me draw your next attention, and I think you got a phone call on this, which is our electronic monitoring, line 61. And last year, we had an expense of almost $6,500, and you're projecting $12,000 this year, which I think is good, the increased use. However, there is no corresponding increase on the revenue side.
And I spoke to the superintendent reference that we're hoping to increase about 6 people out per week, and break down about $70 a week, roughly $420 a month. It's about $20,000 in revenue. But
Right,
the
so-
revenue was never put in there because it's projected, so the superintendent told me that the revenue's not in there, but he projects around $20,000.
Well, let me go back. We get to the revenue side, so what line are we talking about increasing on the revenue side?
I don't think there's any revenue in there.
Show under work release or?
I guess it would be work release, or it's not pre-release, right? It's not.
What told me is there is nothing put in here on the revenue side for this.
That would be out of jail income.
Line 31, which has nothing.
No, down below, jail income.
Oh.
Which is old 41.
I see telephone income, I don't see jail income, all right, which is,
Telephone income, and right above that is jail income on my
Gotcha.
sheet.
so you're proposing to increase that to 30,000?
We're at 10,000.
I don't think you can have it both
25,000.
ways.
Yeah.
You can't project a high percentage increase on the expense side with nothing on the revenue side. I don't think anyway. So,
Did they go up on the cost of electronic monitoring?
From what I got from,
Was
no,
there
what I got from
increase?
is just didn't put that in as revenue because you're hoping to get 6 out, so we didn't put anything as projected. I mean, if you want to take a lower figure, $10,000 to $15,000, it's going to be revenue.
If I could, Mr. Chairman?
Sure.
I know we've had the discussion, and I'm not sure that I've had it in your presence in here, but we had a successful program a great number of years ago, and then I believe the law changed, or the courts ruled differently, and and we stopped having as many people out. And I understand that that's changed now and that we have the opportunity now to get more people out. So I'm really in favor of this number if our efforts are going to be to get the people out. And I know it's advantageous to you and to taxpayers, so I would truly like to see if we're going to expend $9,300 this year, where we believe that's going to be, because it would seem like you're gonna make the effort to have that happen. And if that could be $20,000, I don't want to lowball that down to $10,000, but in the $15,000 range or something, I would like to see income shown here for that item. It's going to happen.
Yes.
Tell you what I'm going to leave it open for now. I'm going to note it in the minutes and have them respond to it, but at our March 3rd meeting, my expectation is that Commissioner Johnson will come back and give us a realistic number on the revenue side. Okay? Is that okay with everybody? Let me see here. Just I'm trying to vehicle lease purchase, I guess, which is line 73. Is that the $14,000 line, or am I on the wrong one?
You're on the wrong one.
That's vehicle
No, it's
expense.
there, you're right.
All right, line 78, then the vehicle expense line.
Right.
And I think you explained this before, but help me out again.
Laws have changed for county corrections. We do most of our transports, and laws changed to be able to put blue lights on our vehicles.
Right, I am on the right line. Let me ask you a question on that. Is that a legal requirement to have blue lights on this, or is this a nice-to-have requirement?
Well, now we're transporting our own offenders
No,
armed,
I understand.
highly suggested.
Not a legal requirement.
I don't believe so. I will have to double check if it's a legal requirement.
I just don't understand why we have to spend that much money on light bars that will probably never be used. I don't know. That's my opinion. I don't know if anyone else's.
And that'd be a one-time cost.
Unless I understand, but if there's a state legal requirement for those light bars, that's one thing. I would think that I don't know when you would use flashing blue lights to transport a prisoner, frankly. I would hope never. And if you did, I think there's other ways of going about that, such as plugging in a portable blue light and zipping down the highway. So I'm a little concerned about that line here. And yeah.
Is it the case the sheriff is not transporting people now? We are.
We are. The only one that the sheriff's department does is from our place to this courthouse. We take care of everything else now. The sheriff used to take care of that stuff. No longer. We take care of it all ourselves. And with the feds coming in at some point, we will be handling all those transports as well too. They pay for that, and we be taking care of that, so it can be going all over the state.
If I could, on my travels to Concord down 93, I'm passed by many times van transporting. I don't know if they're going down to the state facility or whatever. I never see lights being run. I see the sheriffs all over the years running down the street. Unless they're in pursuit, I never see lights running. I would also like to hear the reason if it's a legal requirement or not. And maybe the chairman's remembering back to the streets of San Francisco where they popped that on TV on top. So I like your thought process.
I could even go further back than that.
Dragnet
Broadway Crawford was in his Oldsmobile, but I don't want to.
Okay, I'll get it back to you for.
Yeah, and what I'd like on that is a breakdown of exactly how much those lights are gonna cost, because I have a feeling that it's going to be eliminated, so,
Okay.
okay,
Could I ask one further?
sure.
Have we been provided a list of what vehicles your department actually has? Could we get a list and what the use of those vehicles are? You're gonna be transporting now, so I'm sure that's a more specialized vehicle. Do you have other vehicles that you're using other than the one you have one that's running back and forth for food service?
We have the truck for food services, and we have 3 other vehicles for our transports, but I can give a breakdown what they are.
Do you have a vehicle that, for transporting prisoners to work duties around property or other places? Could you show us what those vehicles are and what they're used for?
Sure.
The answer to that, excuse me,
I'm sorry, yeah.
the answer to that question, Representative McConkey, is no, they don't have a vehicle for transporting around the complex. It's done by the farm vehicles.
But I do understand we have a vehicle that's used for maintenance personnel.
No.
Now,
That's the farm.
I'm not speaking of your maintenance being the county, but I thought we had a vehicle that was being used by your maintenance person.
That's the red truck that he's talking about.
The red truck, which
When
is
it
used
isn't
back and
hauling-
forth to
when
get
it
the
isn't
meals.
Hauling laundry
Yeah,
and
that's
food,
fine.
it's,
If we could see a list, I think that would be helpful in what it is.
All right, so we're gonna get that.
Hey, could I ask one more?
Sure,
I
Ken.
don't know if this is appropriate time or if you've already gone over this. When someone leaves a facility for a work program, whether it be off-site or on-site, I would imagine they're logged in and logged out of here, where they're going.
Yes.
Okay. Could you provide a total number of hours for last year, this year, and for this year, can you provide where those people went for what work service? Were they on-site? What was it they did, and how many hours that was done? Don't need it today, don't need it tomorrow, but I'd like to have it ahead of budget. So what I'm saying is, I'm not looking for 5,000 hours. If it was 5,000 hours, 4,000 of it was for outside maintenance, shoveling roofs and all that sort of thing. 1,000 hours was, for farm production. Break it out. I've heard.
I'll try. It might be a little tough because it's usually just logged that they're out to work,
Okay.
into work.
Perhaps we could look, if that's the case, and you could provide that information, perhaps it would be helpful for the delegation in future years, logged out for help for where. That would seem to be something I know I'd be interested in seeing, as I'm sure many other members would. Thank you.
That was my last, sure.
Can I just ask, what kind of questions do we have about where people are going? Are we wondering where people are going? Or what are we trying to get at when we ask for that information?
Thank you. We have a great asset base and people here that are providing service to the county. I'd like to know exactly what they're doing. We always hear in relative terms that, they're working, they're doing this, doing that. I think it'd be nice to quantify where they are and what it is they're doing. Perhaps you're not interested in that list. I and others are.
I'm just trying to understand what we're trying to learn here. So we're trying to learn what the staff is doing or where the prisoners are going?
Prisoners.
Okay.
And at the same point, how many hours we're taking for the supervision of that activity.
So you want
Okay.
hours for supervision activity too?
I'm supposing that if someone's released, somebody's watching them.
Depends what it is. A lot of them go out to work release, they go to jobs.
Okay.
And we don't necessarily watch them. If they're
Okay.
home confinement, they're on their own. We may check on them here and there.
Okay.
The farm goes out to the farm, work there's somebody there. I'll try to see what I can
Sounds like
find.
there's three or four categories.
Yeah,
If you could
there
help,
is.
that'd be helpful.
Yep.
Thank you.
that was the last line that I had flagged as a potential area for explanation. Let me summarize here, and then I'll open it up to the subcommittee and see if there are any other lines that you would like to have an explanation on. For the Assistant Superintendent, Henry, the lines in question were line 29, where you're going to give us a breakdown of inmate programs. We were looking to reduce line 53 by about a $1,300 cost. And again, you're going to explain that. We were looking at line 61, which again is the monitoring line, and I don't have an issue with the 12,000, that's fine, but I do have an issue with the revenue side of that, so you're going to come back on that one. Line 78 was the motor vehicle line that had to do with, that was a $14,000 line, and I'm questioning the light bar expense there, and I'd like that broken down.
I'll break it down between light bars and what, if it's a major vehicle expense.
Yeah, I want to know what, I want a breakdown of that entire line, and then we'll look at that again on March 3rd. Just for the record, I had asked, and I'll fill you in, Representative McConkey, you were late. I had asked to be updated by the commissioner as to the status of bringing in the federal prisoners, which looks very promising. And I believe I had asked him to update me periodically on the program to reduce personnel turnover rates. And I think that would be the extent of what I've asked you to do. With that, are there any other lines in question anyone would like to talk about?
I know you mentioned it downstairs, Mr. Chairman, but I think you ought to take a serious look at the heat. This time last year, we were paying, I don't know, $1.50 a gallon, and the last bill for the big tank was $2.07, representing a 30% increase, and you haven't built that into the heating cost.
I thought you said propane was $2.40.
That's for the small tank for
Oh, okay.
Paid over 3 this week.
What?
Paid over 3 this week.
I thought we talked about increasing that line too.
That must hurt. You're only paying $2.40. It's gonna hurt you.
It's life.
You know,
But I think you ought to consider putting some more money in. We
Uh-huh.
don't spend it, we don't spend it.
Good look at that line, but, let me just throw something out, because, year in and year out, we go through these budgets, and I can flag all of the discretionary lines, and I can flag the non-discretionary lines, such as Social Security and heating and electric, and frankly, I think you do everyone a favor if the non-discretionary lines were lumped into and then broken down in a overall county line, because it's crazy for us to look at them, frankly, unless we look at them in total. I had observed, and again, we're looking at the propane issue and that, and I think I was misunderstood as to whether we should bid this or not, and because of the ownership of the fuel tanks. But what I was really suggesting is that when you get into the June or July timeframe, is it possible to look at the pre-buy on propane? And I would suggest that if the pre-buy price is any type of percentage lower than your average cost over the winter, that you jump on it. Now, to me, that's good management. That's looking at a county problem and not necessarily a jail problem. I mean, that's the administration building, it's just, wherever you burn propane. Those type of things I would be interested in. I think if you looked at a total county budget in terms of, and maybe there could be another subcommittee to look at that. I'm just throwing this out because, like I say, as I go through this, 60% of these lines, I'm not interested in them, frankly, because I have no control over them. There's nothing I can do with them. I'd much rather see a budget put together which is town and county expense for that, and then under that, you could break that down as to your various components. But all these subcommittees we serve on, it's the same issue. It's like, it's pointless. Why are we wasting our time? So if I could rearrange it, that's precisely what I would do with it. I would have these budgets broken down as to discretionary, non-discretionary, and all of those expenses that are county expenses, they should be combined, and we'll look at them that way.
Go ahead.
I'd rather that you go first.
I was just gonna say that if you wanted to know what the cost of an inmate, you gotta include heat in there.
Agreed.
So you don't want it taken out of the jail budget.
No, I'm not, I'm saying
But you want it
the
separate.
information has value. I'm not saying it doesn't have value.
Mhm.
But I'd rather see it set aside, and then under that set aside, you could break down a component sub.
Mhm.
But then when we deal with because what do we spend our time on?
Mhm.
The discretionary side. I mean, I can argue the price of light bars,
Yeah,
but I sure as heck can't argue the price of fuel.
all right.
I mean, it's pointless. It's,
Okay.
unless it was presented as we just said then. But I think you'd save everyone a lot of time, including yourselves, frankly. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
You make a good point, Mr. Chairman, but that doesn't solve today's problem with our way we budget now. We have it looked to me like it's gonna be a shortfall on the heating expense, and I would think that you people would consider raising the heating amount.
Well, the question should be, should we purchase more sweaters or purchase, I'm being facetious.
Oh, my gosh. You don't want that.
That was a humor.
What wasn't lost on me?
Oh.
What line are we on, Mr. Commissioner?
068.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
If someone could remind me, because I'm not sure from building to building, is propane metered going into the jail?
The chairman, if I could, the chairman of the delegation has told us that she would like to have meters on all buildings, including gas and water. And somebody it's in charge of that is coming up with those figures for us, and we should have them for you.
But at the present time, and I think Will's trying to tell me, there is a meter going into the jail.
The jail, and there's one here in this building.
For propane, yes, you're right, sir.
Into the jail.
Yes, sir.
Yep.
So we know the, whatever, the gallons last year to this year. And your estimate is figured on that gallon figure. And Kathy Gary's number she's using is not an estimate. It was on those gallons that were used at your facility.
Yeah, it's like 3,700 gallons, 12 fill-ups a year, but again, I think when this was originally done, the price of propane was at a different price, and it has significantly increased, and that is the concern.
Thank you. Your fill-ups per year, you're running out of this big tank over here, aren't you?
Yep.
Or not?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So from that tank, the line runs out, and just before it goes into the building, it has a meter over there? Or are we using the meter from here?
You're correct, there's a meeting right by his building.
Okay.
I believe Joe reads every week or two or something. He's got a schedule that he reads.
Okay, so great. So someone, and the meter's being read over at his building, how often?
I'm not sure we read. I know that it was 12 Phillips at 3,700 gallons per month, so I'm not sure how often Joe's reading it, but I can find out.
Well, I think we can entertain a conversation on the fuel over there if we know that that's the number of gallons that you are using. But my question is, it's one thing to have meters if we're checking the meters to see. And so if I could ask, well, you're assured that 3,700 gallons is the amount of gallons that went into his facility?
I can't assure that. I would say by him saying 12 Phillips, I'm guessing that Joe checks it once a month, because we get a lot more tanker trucks that come in here than 12 a year. So he probably reads it once a month, giving his 12 readings that Captain has. Just by assumption, I would say that, because I know he has a schedule saying 12 Phillips probably once a month to give him his total, because we get a lot more loads in here than 12.
Okay, sounds good. I just want to make sure that the number, when we say the number of gallons, is what's actually being used at that point.
And I know that I can check with Joe and double check.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Commissioner, if I should recognize Representative Ticehurst. She's been patiently waiting.
Oh, we just brought up a subject that has come up before, and it's a continuing source of frustration for me. And it's also a subject that I believe I've been misunderstood on, and that is just the format of the budget just isn't working well for a lot of people for a lot of reasons. One of my frustrations is that I can't manipulate the figures myself. So if we could get it in a spreadsheet format, so people who have different interests could move the figures around or make the changes and see how it affects things, that would be really useful. And I did try to determine what kind of arrangement we have with the vendor who provides our software and who I believe creates our reports for us. But I fear I stepped on some toes, so I backed off. But if we could revisit that and try to maybe have a discussion so that we understood better what kinds of information and what format people were looking for, and if those of us who are looking for it could have a better understanding of why it's not as easy as we think it should be to get that information, and then hopefully find something that works better for everybody, I would really appreciate it.
Okay.
Commissioner Babson, getting back to your question on the fuel line. Now, I assume this building is heated by propane?
Yes.
The jail is heated by propane?
Yes.
Yeah, all three buildings are propane.
So the total county fuel cost you're projecting to go up. So why don't you come back here on March 3rd and give us an across-the-board recommendation of what the impact of that cost is going to be on all components of the county that are using propane. You know? And then I think we can address it at the full delegation meeting.
If I can clarify, since send it out, the superintendent, 2013 we utilized 55,000 gallons at about $1.60 was estimated cost, so $88,000 roughly if it's $1.60. That's why we're looking. We did ask for it to go up, but the commissioners can bring it up.
And might I ask you to do one more thing, because I really never did get an answer on it. Between now and March 3rd, who are we using, Eastern Propane?
Yes.
Would somebody call Eastern Propane and ask about if they have a pre-buy policy?
Yes, I will.
And, answer that at the meeting, and again, that, it's always a risk, but I'm saying if you have an opportunity to pre-buy at a cost, at an average cost that's less than your previous winter, I would suggest you jump on it. So, but now I don't even know if it's available for facilities of this. I have no idea, but I'd like to find out. Yep.
To answer your question, there was 25 deliveries last year. Each one of you received one of these in your last meeting. This time last year, we paid $1.23, so it's up almost 80 cents a gallon. I don't have the gallonage here though.
If I could
Yes,
ask
sir.
Commissioner David, when you average that over a year, 2012 versus 2013, I look at your chart, there's spikes and there are lows. Are you accounting for what the average price is over all that time? Because I'm thinking.
No,
even-
if I understand your question, Representative, that was the cost of delivery. We're not averaging in, because we have no idea whether we're filling the tank half to the top from half full, or front to the top from a quarter full, or first in, first out, we don't know, so all we can go is on the average of the delivery.
And over the course of the year, I'm saying, when we're buying propane in August, it's less than we're buying propane now. And the number we're using now for our comparison is what the last buy was.
As is the chart shows what the buy was on that time. That's
So-
not an average on them.
Okay, I'm wondering if we could just see the average of last year and this year on the gallon price over the course of the year.
Well,
Is it, because
you got that, you can do it at home, it's all right there. Show you each delivery, add them up, we can't tell, however, we can't tell you how many gallons.
well, that's my point. We need to know gallons, so if we're making a determination of how much more we're going to increase the
Okay.
budget,
Do that.
what's the average we paid per gallon for the year? And you're gonna need to know the same thing for next year if you consider a pre-buy, whether it's a good deal or not a good deal.
Okay, any other lines? And Assistant Superintendent Henry, you have a full understanding of what we've requested to come back? Any other business on this subcommittee? I'm sorry. One more thing. You had mentioned that your total costs were down. I'm looking at year end of $3,097,000 is what you actually spent. Before we do any adjustment here, we're looking at $3,272,000. So I see that as an increase of $175K. Is that correct?
We'll hit the dot.
Just to correct, no, it's not a dot, but this is the proposed. You had said you're coming in under, and
Of what was budgeted from the year before to now is under.
I see.
The rest of the bills aren't in for the rest of the year. We'll hit our mark of what was last year's budget.
Yeah, am I not reading this correctly here? I'm looking at actual dollars of $3,097,000, right?
2013, column 2.
Right, that's what they actually spent. And you're proposing a budget of, for 14, of 3272.
Correct, but the delta, I'll make sure I'm not confused here. But the delta budget for last year was what, $3,381,000. There's savings this year that we did save from the adopted budget.
No, agreed.
And we're gonna, that's what I'm saying.
Okay, I'm looking at 13 to 14, that's all. So, but for budget purposes there, that will impact the tax rate, we're looking at $175K increase, correct? Okay, everyone's nodding their head, so I'm just. I get it. Okay.
Which I might add is if we run into a propane cost, so there was a surplus from last year over what was budgeted.
Right.
And if I remember right, in this year, there's a $900,000 surplus in what we approved last year and the monies that we'd spent. So unless, my thought on the propane as they're going through that, the heating costs as they're going through that, there's already money in that budget typically that would cover that overrun.
Yeah.
And to increase it costs us taxpayers more money.
May I just clarify with you for a moment? This is what was budgeted for last year, correct?
Yeah,
And this is what's being budgeted for this year.
yeah.
And so what's being budgeted this year is less than what was
Well, yeah,
budgeted
but
last
we're
year.
kind of looking at apples and oranges.
Yeah.
So
Correct.
it's, I'm looking at actuals to proposed. So the proposed budget is now,
I understand.
great budget, I'm not being critical of that, I'm just looking at a year-over-year actual to the proposed with an increase of 175,000. Of which, I'm sure most of it is totally out of your control, as previously discussed. So, but frankly, you can bring this to Commissioner Johnson. All in all, we're pretty happy with his budgeting as compared to some other budgeting.
Mr. Chairman, has the union contract been decided?
No.
No,
How many months out are are you close, or any idea?
No.
I have no idea. We're not doing a negotiation.
Have you had a conversation with somebody that's doing the negotiation?
I'm on there. It's not close.
Months, years?
Far apart.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Representative.
Thank you. So it seems that when we get to the budget point in the year, there's a bit of a crunch. Everybody's really busy, and we're trying to just find out facts and pieces and small bits of information. But I'm wondering, I would like to invite you during the year, this coming year, if you see things of a longer range nature that you feel would benefit the county, if you would talk to us earlier in the year about what your goals might be, what improvements, long-term improvements we might make would be, so that we don't just have a conversation at the budget time.
Sure.
Thank you.
Makes sense.
Anything else? Okay, before I adjourn, let me thank the commissioners for your input, I appreciate it. Assistant Superintendent Henry, thank you. I think we're close, I think we'll put this to bed at the full delegation meeting after we get some responses here. We should be able to quickly go through them. So with that, let me adjourn the meeting.
How's the roads out there now?
Miserable.
Oh, it's
Are they?
really,
Yeah.
it's so slippery.